My heart is racing right now to see this because this is a big find. Today it is nothing but a ghost town. I'm using a map from 1900 as kind of a guide, but I'm also just looking out in the woods for any kind of ruins because even by 1900 these places were abandoned, and it seems by the 1930s this community was really waning. This is going to be a scouting mission. Gives us another window into the past. Farmland became worthless essentially, and people bought it for pennies on the dollar, and it became tree farms, and it's been that ever since. More and more home sites. It is crazy how much there was around here. I'm Robert, and this is Adventures into History. Today I'm back in the New Hope community. This used to be a very large farming community. There were many home places, farms, churches. I don't even know what all was here, but today it is nothing but a ghost town and only ruins remain. I have been deep diving the history of this community. I already did another scouting mission where we looked for an old church that appeared on a 1900 map. Unfortunately, we found no remains of that church. On today's video, we're going to visit some of these home places that I do already know where are, and also look for anything else. There's some amazing old aerial photography of this area, so maybe some of these home sites we'll actually be able to see from the air back in the 30s. But this is where we are right now. There was a home site here. There was also another one across the road, but if we look across the road today, it's nothing but pine trees. So I don't know if there's going to be anything left there, but there is something really interesting down this hill. So let's go down there and check it out. One of the most fascinating home sites, I think, out here to me, because it's kind of a mystery. We have two chimneys here. They both appear to be a chimney that would have been on the outer wall versus a chimney that would have been like in the center of the house. And if you had two chimneys that were close together in the center of the house, that would make more sense to me than two being on the outside of the wall, but still this close together. I haven't really seen a design like that I can think of at an old home place before, just because of how close together they are. There's another really interesting thing about this particular house site or home site. We are down in a hole. Now, most homes were built on the high ground, not down in a hole. But if you look around me this way, there's a hill up there, and then if we turn around this way, we can see that it's a hill back here. This is what would typically be considered a wash. Then if we walk this way, you know, this is really uneven ground right here. If you look, it kind of slopes downward. Not really the place that you would expect footprint of a certainly not a big house, but really honestly any house. It's just very unusual for it to be in a hole like this. So it makes me really curious about what exactly this structure was with these two chimneys here. Let's take a look at them. So we have the first one right here that's collapsed more so than that one has, but we can see that it was a chimney. There's a firebox would have been here. That is not a brick, that is a rock. And I thought it was a brick at first, but that is actually just a field stone. And these are both field stone built chimneys. So typically that's going to be, you know, anywhere 1830s to 1860s, 70s. As brickyards became common in the late 1800s and early 1900s, that's when we really start to see the kind of fieldstone chimney go away, because bricks became much cheaper. Previously, they would have been made more locally on the plantations, and we see a lot of plantation era brick. at some of these old sites. But as the brickyards and railroads became more common, then this kind of fieldstone construction started to go away because bricks were cheap, they were available, and they were much less work than finding the perfect rock to build a fieldstone chimney. But really, I think the most fascinating thing is just how close together these two chimneys are. You can almost touch both of them. That would be, I don't know, either two small cabins that were really close together. I don't know what, even if it was like a house with a kitchen, you wouldn't think that the living room chimney would be this close to the kitchen chimney. I'm not sure if this area does date back to the plantation era. So I don't know if these may not be leftovers from cabins for enslaved people. And it was two separate cabins that were just built really close together. That may explain why it was in a undesirable building location down in this wash right here. Just nothing about this site right here makes a lot of sense to me. It's unusual, very unusual for a home site and for these to be so close together, but it's beautiful, amazing construction of both of these chimneys. Even though they have collapsed, we can see the quality of construction in them. If we look right here, you can see all of those rocks, how perfectly they are all placed to build that one. And then the one that's standing more, you can see how well stacked it was. And thankfully these were spared when they logged this area all around us, but there was another house site up here that wasn't so lucky, so let's go to that one next. And we'll recheck our map real quick so you can kind of see that I believe that we are at that home site right there that just shows up as a black dot on the map, even though we're a little bit off on the overlay. That one looks like it. There was one across the road. We'll have to see if there's anything left of that because it's all just pine trees over there now. But there were also two more up there. And then of course we have all these other house sites all around that just used to cover this place as it was such a large community. So let's head that way. Also, I forgot to say that if this down here, this structure was, maybe dwellings for enslaved people, that might explain why we don't have all of that broken glass and kind of artifact situation around these two. But I don't know. The other thing I've considered is smoke shop, some kind of workshop, blacksmith shop. But still, I don't know. None of that really makes sense. Turn around and get a shot of those too. And if you think about it, isn't it interesting to consider the fact that when these people built that over there, they would have had no idea that here we are, 180 years later, wondering what exactly were they doing here. It's interesting how time moves on like that. So you wouldn't know it, but this is a home site right here. Every last trace of it was probably erased, maybe in this last logging operation, or maybe it was erased before then. Again, if we look at the map, we're right there at that one. Then there was another one that was on up the road, but this was a home site. Maybe we can find a aerial picture of this one and to see what it looked like right here. But let me show you. Even though we don't see anything, I mean, look around here. Would you ever know that there was a home here? There's no trace of it. Or is there? Let's look around and see if there is a trace of it. I'll show you one thing right now. It's going to be this right here. This is going to be really hard to see because of the logging that's happened here. This is the remains of the chimney. that was here. It's been bulldozed and pushed up, but this was a chimney base here, and it's just all mixed up with all of this. So that's one clue, that rock pile right there. We know that that was a chimney base. I know that that was a chimney base before this area was logged, and of course now it's just in one big pile. But there are other clues that we can look for. Even if the rock chimney base, all the bricks, everything has been removed, there are surface level things that we can look for that we can identify that this was indeed once someone's house. And this is going to be an example of that right here. Look at this, just an insignificant piece of glass, right? But this is all that is left from someone's dinner plate. The people who were, you know, alive and living here and called this place home were, you know, maybe eating their supper off of, whatever it's a piece of. And you got to think, when was the last time somebody touched this, especially when it was whole? And but that is one sign that there was indeed a house here. Dinner plate back there is not the only piece that's on the ground here. I was talking about glass artifacts earlier. There are a lot of them scattered on this ground here. And glass is the one thing that the ground does not seem to keep secret. That is always a telltale sign at an old home place, all the pieces of broken glass that are on top of the ground. This was once someone's home. So one of the reasons that I wanted to make these scouting videos out here at New Hope is just as much for you guys at home as it is for me, because once I can come out here and identify these home sites like the one that we looked at down in the valley over there, then I can take this video back home and use the old topographic maps that we're using to kind of follow these old roads and identify these home sites, and overlay those with the old aerial photography from the 30s. And then right there for me, just as much for the viewer, I'm able to look at these ruins and look at all of this stuff kind of together to get an idea of this community, a better idea of this community. Also, of course, coming out here and knowing where I'm standing when I'm looking at the maps versus the aerial photos helps me identify what else may be around. And just for reference sake, we're kind of following the road now, the old road, as we walk back. The little house site that's kind of a mystery to me is down here in this hole. You'll probably be able to tell that it's more of a little hole, holler, valley from up here than you were down there. Down there in that little cluster of trees is where those two chimneys are, the two mystery chimneys. But then if we look back this way, we've got this great flat hill right here. That is perfect for building a house, in my opinion. That's the high ground. That would be a much better home site than down in that hole right there. So again, really kind of a mystery as to what was that, why did they build it in a hole? Let's move on. So there's no doubt here that this is a home site. We've got two chimneys. We've actually got a lot going on right here in this one home site. We've got two chimneys that have collapsed, and the chimneys fell back this way. These chimneys were fieldstone at the base, but they were actually built with brick. And it's that old plantation style brick. We can see one there, one there, one there, and one there. So it's interesting to see here that this was obviously probably a nicer, you know, old home place using this brick versus all fieldstone like we have seen at other home sites around here. And I think it also gives us, you know, a pretty early age. This plantation era brick, you know, used anywhere between 1820s to, like I said, generally speaking, kind of falls out of favor 1860s. Certainly by the 70s and 80s, we don't really see it anymore. So this was probably a kind of a fine home here, probably a plantation house, I would definitely say. And it looks kind of small today, these ruins, this footprint of ruins here, but it was pretty large. I was trying to get an orientation for how these chimneys were in this house, whether they were two that faced in, whether they faced out, whether they were double-sided, but it appears as though the firebox is gone here, and the firebox was probably made of brick, and that's what we see on the ground here. So I think that these are going to be the base of the chimneys, which means this house was pretty high off of the ground, which is not untypical for, you know, this era. A lot of brick here. They both definitely fell in towards each other. So pretty interesting. That was a very large chimney though. If we look at how wide that is, that was a big one. But we can further see the footprint of the house. Remember I said it looks kind of small, but isn't as small as it looks. If we walk out this way, we can find foundation stones for the house. And they're gonna come out, here's a good example of one. They're gonna come out to here, but also all the way back here. And another thing that you won't be able to see on video, unfortunately, but I can see here is we can actually see the shape of the house because the ground is kind of like a terrace up where the house would have been. So we can see that the house shape went around that way and went in, but then it came back in right here. See, we don't have field stones over here. We do have this interesting kind of hump right here, and I do believe that there was some kind of structure, maybe a porch or something right here. This was, well, I don't know what this was. I was going to say that this was probably a kitchen, but I don't see any signs that this was a kitchen right here. There's no chimney right here. I don't see a, you know, like a flue for a wood burning stove or anything left right here, but this was definitely part of the footprint of the house. We have those foundation stones coming out. Again, we have more foundation stone here, so kind of like this was one big room right here from that pillar. There's the chimney base over there, and then let's walk through. And looking at this, I do think that this is probably an internal chimney because it looks like we have foundation stones coming all the way out here. And again, we can kind of see that hump right there, where we can see the footprint of the house. But we've got foundation stones going all the way back around, chimney. But this kind of well-preserved home site in ruin is not the only thing that we could learn something about these people with. Let's keep going and I'll show you something that I think is super cool. This is one of their rides through this old community. Can you imagine the day that this car was new and driving through the roads of this community, all these houses all around us? Blows my mind to think about that. I have no idea what kind of car this was, how old it is, any of that. So if you do, please leave me a comment. I would love to know. I think this is the gas tank for it right here. This old windshield frame is the air conditioner. That is super cool. So home site and what they were driving. So this is the backyard behind the house. So we got the old car parked in the backyard. Right there we have the house is behind it, but we have some more stone ruins back here. And the question that I asked on the previous video is, when is a rock just a rock? And it's not just a rock when it looks like it was intentionally placed there by human hands and is not just in a natural spot. This is a case that a rock isn't just a rock. Recently on several videos we've done different stories about stone piles in the woods, telling the difference between rock piles from farmers clearing fields and that sort of thing. And this is not just a stone pile in the woods, this was another old chimney. A couple ways we can tell. If you look down here, it is very well stacked rock. Very well stacked rock right there, but it's not just rock. I don't want to disturb, I don't want to disturb any of these, but there's one right there that we can. It's also brick. There's another old plantation era brick. And look on this one, you can see the detail on this one. Isn't that really cool, where you can see where it was smoothed out? You can see the tool, whatever kind of tool they were using to smooth this out is left there in the brick. It's very uneven. That's an old plantation brick there. I wonder what they were using to smooth that out, flatten that bottom out. I'm going to put that back exactly where it came from. So another chimney pile, pretty far from the house. House is all the way back there. And of course the car is right there. So what was this structure here? And I don't know for sure, but I believe that this was the kitchen for that house right there. It is a little further back from the house than I would think it would be. We don't have a footprint for it. Yeah, we do. We do actually have a footprint for it. And maybe you'll be able to see it. I'm standing at the base of the chimney, and if we look there and around, you can see where the dirt once again is raised, almost like a terrace, accentuating the footprint of this house. And let me see if there are foundation stones. I think there are. I don't know, I doubt you'll be able to tell on video, but it goes over like that. Just creates kind of a lip where we can see the size of this structure. There's fieldstone foundation there. Maybe you'll be able to tell from here if we start at the chimney and we go around. Everything's probably going to blend together on video. I hope it doesn't though. I really hope you guys can see this where it goes out and we've got a lip over and this kind of raised perfect square that really shows the outline of this house. It's all the way over here, but we can see just how large this building was. There's the chimneys all the way there, and this is the outermost corner of this house right here. And we've got that straight perfect line in the dirt kind of going up where we can tell that this was a structure here. Starts there, goes all the way back up there. So, you know, this is possibly, I don't think it was a kitchen anymore now. Originally I thought this was the detached kitchen for the house over there. Don't believe that. I think that this was probably housing for people who were enslaved, maybe. Certainly this property seems old enough for that. Maybe, you know, it was the housing for the overseer or something like that. Don't know for sure, but it's a very large structure here, separate from the main house. But wait, there's more all the way back here. This looks like just another random pile of stones, but this is not either. This was something that was stacked. We can see where some of the rocks were stacked. This one's been pretty well disturbed. As far as what this was, I don't know. There's not really a footprint to it like we see at the other ones. The big house, then the kitchen or whatever it was. We don't have that large footprint right here, so what exactly this was, I don't know. But if we pan back that way, from standing at this furthest most out rock pile, we have where the car is, and then the house is further back behind the car, and then we have that other rock pile where that other house was. And this is just in one backyard right here. One thing too, I wanted to make a note of exactly where we are in here, and I think that that's the home site that we were just at. This map is just a little bit off, plus I've moved away from it a little bit, just to see what all is around us there. Man, there was so much. It's that way, that way, that way, more and more home sites. It is crazy how much there was around here. My heart is absolutely racing right now. Let me kind of explain. So these roads, a lot of them we can drive on, and they are the old roads. They follow the old roads. But then there are other old roads that you cannot drive on, and you have to get out and walk. So while we were driving around, I was using my onboard computer to Google Maps, basically, and look for clusters of trees that looked like they might hold something interesting. And I haven't seen it. I have not put eyes on it yet, but I think that I just found our first undocumented cemetery out here in the old New Hope community. My heart is bracing right now to see this, because this is a big find right here, if that's what it is. Let's check it out. There's also an old barn down there that's not that old. It doesn't look like, or I don't know, we'll look at it in just a minute, but this is not a cemetery. This is not a cemetery, but this is something that is just as cool. All right, so here we go. This is an old building of some sort, like a store or something. It's not a house, so this is exciting. This is really a fascinating find out here. So that looks like it would have been a window basically there. But then there are these steps go down into it. This is really interesting. It's very small and it's basement-like. It kept going that way, but whatever was there was on top of the ground. So I don't know now what this was, but this is a big find for me. We are not very far from the ferry at all. There were two ferry crossings at the Chattahoochee River. There was one upper ferry crossing and then there was a lower ferry crossing. We are at the upper ferry crossing, or near the upper ferry crossing. And we're very close to it. So, you know, I was thinking maybe this was a store for travelers along the way. But this is definitely a basement of some sort. There's no doubt about that. And judging from the construction, I mean, this isn't modern. This is, you know, I hesitate to say, you know, with this plaster on the inside, you know, there are rock buildings that were built in the later 1800s, but kind of maybe in this area. I mean, this wasn't just some unfinished basement. This was, you know, finished with plaster on the inside, and just most of it has worn away. But see, it's going to be that old stuff, because you see it was mixed with, you know, very soft plaster, but also very soft mortar mixed with rock. So, you know, kind of the mortar makes me think early to mid 1800s. The plaster makes me think a little bit later 1800s. It's really hard to say on this one. But this is a basement having this finished plaster on the inside. So it makes me go back to store. Let's see, there was a structure up here too. There's foundation stones. We can see some, you know, possibly a wall or something right there. I was not expecting ruins like this out here, to be honest with you. You know, I knew that this was a farming, agricultural area, lots of home sites. I expected chimneys and that sort of thing. I expected to run across some undocumented cemeteries. I did not expect to run across this. Oh, here we go. We've got brick. Oh yeah, this is old. Whatever this was, this is old. Okay, so this going to be salt glazed. That's what we get. You see that glaze on it right there? Plantation era brick. We can see some of the glazing kind of pop out in the sun. See if I can get the sun on it. And you see there's just kind of that shimmer on there. So this was a brick structure. Oh wow, look at that. Wow, that's a piece of an old crock right there. This is another piece of a crock, just with and more crock. This is old. This is a plantation era structure out here, and that's not a crock. But look how rough that edge is. So what was this right here? This is like a chimney base, but there's nothing on top of it. Right there. There was never anything on top of it. But there was something on top of this, obviously. As this one is a mystery for me. So what we've got at this site is it's loaded with artifacts. We've got this old brick, old plantation era brick here. So, you know, brick structure. This is a big find right here. I can't believe this was never written about, whatever this was. The ferry crossing was right here. So it could have been a store, but it's old. Let's look at this barn down here. So this is a big deal because these are the only standing ruins that I have found to date, or know of to date, within New Hope. This is brand new compared to what we just looked at, you know, early 1900s. The thing is, this is still part of what was New Hope community. Even if everybody left and this was somebody else that came in and had a farm here, you know, it's still part of that story versus, you know, being nothing but woods. So we have this to see. It's not very old. Doesn't change the fact that it's neat to see a standing structure. Actually, when I saw what I thought was a wall around a cemetery, and then I saw this, I thought we must have gotten off of this property, and I had gotten mixed up and gotten turned around somewhere. I had to double check that I was still on the same property that I thought I was on, because I wasn't expecting anything to still be standing out here. So this is a big deal. And, you know, farms existed here from the earliest settlement days. By the 1930s, this community was really waning. The old New Hope Church was torn down after being restored. In 1938, the church was restored into a functional building. Not even 20 years after it was restored, it was torn down and the wood was used to build a barn, and now that barn is not standing anymore. Generally speaking, we're looking at the really old stuff out here in this community, but it continued on, so you would have stuff like this still in existence. It'll go away at some point in time too, so it deserves documentation just like everything else. This was such a big find today. I've really got to try to figure out a way to research and see if I can figure out what this was, because this was, I'm surprised. I'm surprised nothing has been written about this. Well, I'm surprised there's nothing been written about this area as a whole, because I've gone on and on about how much stuff is here, and then we have this building here. I mean, it's one thing to just have an area filled with old chimneys, but this, whatever this was, this is old, very old, and it's amazing. There's one thing I want to note real quick. This property that we're on is under control of the state of Georgia. Any property that is owned by the state of Georgia, it is illegal to remove artifacts from. And an artifact per Georgia law is defined as something older than, like 1980 or something like that. So we can only look at these and then leave them at the site. Now, for the exact reason that we're looking at them right now, because they help us learn something about the site. So, no metal detectors out here. This is state hunting land. So it's not a historic site, but since it is state property, it's illegal to metal detect, remove artifacts, that sort of thing. So we can only look, leave it here, and document it. Because if somebody does come and take these, we wouldn't have those clues of this site. And that is why these are protected per Georgia law. That's why it's illegal to remove artifacts on state-owned property in Georgia for future archaeologists to have the sites preserved as they were. Guys, this was an amazing find today. Scouting mission definitely paid off. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one.